to Invasion Weekly, bringing you the latest of today's news. My name is Giselle Varel.
And I'm Sophia Salaya. Today's top story is an invasion by the United States in Cuba, known as the Bay of Pigs.
Cuban dictator Fidel Castro recently came into power, imposing a huge communist threat in one of our neighboring countries.
President Eisenhower authorized the invasion in an effort to overthrow Castro. For months, the CIA has entrained 1,500 Cuban exiles in Central America in order to invade Cuba.
In the beginning, President Kennedy wasn't sure about the mission and was skeptical about its outcome. The CIA, on the other hand, believed the invasion would inspire Cubans to overthrow Castro. They persuaded Kennedy into giving the go-ahead. The invasion failed due to a couple of reasons, which will be discussed by our expert.
Now let's send it to our expert,
Sheila Gutierrez,
who will tell us why the invasion failed.
Good morning, my name is Sheila Gutierrez. As many of you probably know, the U.S. attempt to defeat Castro failed. A few days prior to the invasion, the New York Times wrote about the plan and leaked information to Castro and everyone else in the world. Shortly after, on April 15, 1961, an airstrike by old unmarked U.S. bombers flown from Nicaragua failed to destroy Cuba's air force. To make matters worse, a plane that was supposed to land in Nicaragua landed in Key West, Florida, a small island on the coast. Airstrikes were canceled by Kennedy, and land invasion on April 17th had little chance of success. Castro was able to quickly plan an attack that eventually led to the defeat of the U.S.
Thanks, Sheila, for that in-depth description of why the invasion failed. Our field reporter was on the scene the day of the attack on April 17th. Here with more on that story is Sheila Gutierrez.
Thanks a lot, Giselle. I'm Sheila Gutierrez reporting live from the Bay of Pigs here in Cuba, where the issue today is the failed attack on them by the U.S. The invaders were fighting for nearly 3 days. It seemed like an endless fight against Castro's forces. I'm here with a Cuban citizen that says she wasn't prepared for what just happened.
Well, you see, I was standing outside of my house taking care of my children when all of a sudden I heard a loud noise coming from the shore. I soon heard about the event on the news and found out that we were being invaded by the U.S. The fight lasted a couple days, but it was evident that the Cubans had it under control. I had heard rumors of this on the newspaper, but I didn't think that the U.S. wasn't this well prepared.
Thank you for your time, Stephanie. You heard it here first, folks. Castro and his forces were well prepared for the invasion. As said in a recent article, instead of eliminating the threat of communism so close to the United States, the Bay of Pigs incident actually strengthened Castro's ties to the Soviet Union. We will later see how this alliance affects the U.S. in October of 1962, as we entered the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is Sheila Gutierrez reporting on the scene. I'll send her back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks again, Sheila. As mentioned before, the effect of the failed invasion led to a strong alliance between the USSR and Cuba, which led to the Cuban Missile Crisis.
The Cuban Missile Crisis was originated from the policies and politics of both the U.S. and the Soviet Union. 3 main events influenced the USSR to be more aggressive, which were the U.S. attack of Bay of Pigs, the Berlin Crisis, and the newly installed nuclear missiles in Turkey pertaining to the United States.
The Soviets' response to the U.S. was upgrading Cuban defense with anti-aircraft weapons called surface-to-air missiles or SAMs. Khrushchev also persuaded Castro to allow the secret installation of offensive nuclear missiles that would be controlled in the Soviets.
On August 29, 1962, the U.S. detected the SAMs with the help of U-2 spy plane. The Soviets argued that the missiles were a defense mechanism and wouldn't pose a threat to the United States. The U.S. and the Soviet Union set up a series of steps to try and ease tension amongst them. A hotline was introduced that would allow the U.S. president and Soviet leader to communicate directly. A treaty was also signed to ban nuclear weapon testing. More of this and Kennedy's actions to deal with the issue will be discussed by our expert, Sheila Gutierrez.
Thanks, Giselle. Kennedy wanted to advance some of the programs he had mentioned at the beginning of his presidency. In Kennedy's inaugural address, he said, "If we are to regain leadership on our domestic problems, it must be presidential leadership." He assembled a group of advisors known as the ExCom to help him decide on a response. Kennedy and the members of the group proposed that they should blockade Cuba to pressure the Soviets to remove the missiles. Kennedy was prepared for war, but it never came down to it. The Soviets responded with 2 letters. The first said Khrushchev offered to remove its missiles if the U.S. pledged to never invade Cuba. The second letter was a demand that the U.S. should move its missiles from Turkey. Kennedy responded to the first letter in agreement and ignored the second one. Khrushchev announced he would dismantle the missiles. The crisis ended with the Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was signed by the United States, the Soviet Union, and Great Britain to end the testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere and in the water. I'm Sheila Gutierrez. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Sheila. The Cuban Missile Crisis had a better outcome than the Bay of Pigs did. The United States shown that it was indeed a world power in controlling the situation with the missiles.
The United States defeated the USSR in its mission and ended with the three most powerful nations in the world signing a treaty.
This is all for today's show. Thanks for listening. I'm Sophia Celaya.
And I'm Giselle Dorado signing off with Invasion Weekend.